Hey Jeff, how's it going, man?
All right, busy day with tomorrow being a holiday, and I'll be at SC23 next week. It's like, oh, this is like I won't be in the office again until effectively December.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had my volume down for a sec there, but you said you're let's see. So yeah, so you said you're out and then you got super compute. Is it next week, right?
Next week.
Got it. So super compute next week, and then of course Thanksgiving week,
Yep.
and you're back
I'll
first
be
week.
back. Yeah, I'll be back on the Monday after Thanksgiving. But
Hmm.
boy, we go from early November to late November in a hurry.
Yeah, that Thanksgiving week's a crazy one, and in the Veterans Day is tomorrow, which is nice. We get it off, so it's like,
So we
yeah, so it's gonna. I agree, it's gonna fly. So cool. So I did cancel the meeting on Thanksgiving Day. I'll see about putting one on that Monday if we're making a lot of progress to add one, but I didn't want to do that quite yet. Let me get
And I
some.
apologize. I didn't pull up the minutes, and I'm trying to remember if I had. Did I have? If there were work items for this last week, I've been
No, I
trying
don't
to
think
complete
so.
stuff.
I'm actually just looking at it now. Let me scan and then I'll share as I get a new one. I think it was mostly, um, let's do this. I'm gonna take this over and copy this over here just for a sec. And title this, and then I'll start sharing this note. Tree.
Hello, folks.
And hey, Shruti, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Let me start sharing here.
Good morning.
Just my notes. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we were just checking to see what was follow up from last week, and I was just telling Jeff, yeah, I canceled the meeting over Thanksgiving. Maybe I'll move it in to Monday, but let's just see how we're progressing. We might. It's a tough week anyway. um,
So that week's Thursday meeting is cancelled.
yeah, so we won't meet. Yeah, because Thursday's Thanksgiving, so we won't meet on Thanksgiving. That should have just come off your calendar a little bit ago. I just sent it out maybe about 25 minutes ago. So hopefully that shows up okay. So yeah, none on the, what is that, the 23rd? I think it's the 23rd. Yep. Okay.
I don't end up receiving that, I guess, but that's fine.
Should go through. Let me double check. Here is the calendar. So it fell off the calendar. So you should get a notice. But yeah, for the 23rd, that day is off.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it might take a while to propagate. I think that, or maybe I forgot to click some button about notifying. So I'll put it in today's minutes too. So November, and maybe I'll try to send an email. Uh, okay. And then we'll get
So
opens in a
I
sec, but oh, go ahead.
no, so I have placeholders for all the sustainability work streams. So I'll cancel
Yeah,
the
thank
one
you.
that's 23rd. No, actually at the summit, a lot of folks mentioned that it's very hard to track when they're
Hmm.
actually meeting. Like if
I
in some
know.
week, if you want to join, also they are not sure where to join. And then recently we moved from GoTo to Zoom, so there was a lot of confusion about this.
Exactly. That messed me up. So yeah, thanks for sending those placeholders out. Yeah, and then for me, some of my meetings moved, but that one was nice because now it's still because of Pacific and daylight savings, and Arizona doesn't move. So, but I think that's all good now. Okay, so I think on the action items, there was really just one for me on the CXL DIMMs require enabling. And then this is sort of where we left off, but I was also going to see I was just looking to see if there was any specific other action items, but I don't think so. Um, so for today, let me see, maybe we had a couple things to talk about, and then I'll get opens, but then we can start talking about initial spec draft kind of things, and see how you guys want to go about it. Okay, but so is there any other opens besides logistical fund?
Sorry, besides,
I'm sorry?
Any other opens besides?
Besides the logistics that we were just talking about.
Oh, okay, logistical, yeah. Nothing new. Yeah, the CXL thing was an open from last time.
Yeah, that was the only one. Okay. So I think the only things we didn't cover, we kind of had on our list, was these three. Obviously, all the stuff from last time, we don't have to review that. And then eventually, I asked Deborah to send me the kind of template for a spec draft. So I'm gonna grab that one and maybe start some stuff offline that I can send to you guys. Actually, maybe Jeff Fifty, is there? How does draft revisions and review work? Is it just kind of emailed around? I mean, no, we're mostly going to look in a meeting, but is there like a shared doc type of collaboration as well?
Yeah, at least. So I'll let Jeff comment with details, but sorry, somebody.
Yeah, I think somebody maybe. Oh, Jeff, we can at least barely hear you, at least for me.
I think it was not Jeff, it was Qasim.
No, it wasn't me, but it's
yeah.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Revisions for what type of doc?
Oh, okay, sorry. So just as we get to kind of working backwards on my agenda, sorry, but just since I'm going to do it over the next week, and I don't think we'll really get to it today, is there a way to collaboratively edit the same doc? Do people use Google Docs for that, or some other way, or?
We did use Google Docs in, the white paper that we were doing in Deborah's work stream. I'm not sure what all the other work streams have used before. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, we've been. I think as an org, I think we've been trying to move to GitHub because it's so much easier to look and track changes without getting. I mean all the access issues and things that happen with Google Docs.
Okay.
And then since we're trying to move folks onto the Markdown format because for all the same reasons, it's really easy to actually do it in GitHub. But I we don't need to do that until you have, I mean, I think we can, if we're doing just some basic, email of someone's doing a lot of, a lot of work and then someone else is just reviewing it until you get to the point where you're starting to make minor changes, not wholesale,
right.
bloody
tracking like a dozen minor changes among 5 people.
Right.
Or whatever,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
okay.
So we can get we can get a new GitHub repo assigned for if there's not already some structure for the sustainability sub project.
Is that something they like? Yeah, is that something I would reach out to like Kevin from OCP to set up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have a whole naming standard and stuff they're trying to get everyone onto. So they'll just go make one for us, and and then we can do it there, and it's completely in the open that way too.
Yep. Okay.
And Danny, can you CC me on that task? Because I think in general for OCP sustainability, we have not yet used GitHub, so we don't have a space.
Good point. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's what I was going to ask too. I'm trying to like catch up with the other work groups, but it sounds like we're on par there. I think I had seen a Word doc from other teams, so I don't know. We may we just start there and then, but maybe that's how they're editing. But okay, maybe even have you used that before, Jeff, and other ones where you're using GitHub for is it a Word doc that actually sits on GitHub, or what's the?
No, it'll be a Markdown document, but if you're not familiar with that, it's a very lightweight. Markdown's a very lightweight format. So effectively it's a text file.
Yeah, it's a text file with some like LaTeX or ProMark type stuff.
Exactly. But yeah, and it's very lightweight. So you don't when you edit the thing, you barely have to you're barely aware that you're not just running text.
Okay, so this sounds like a big one. Maybe I'll even get the template going too.
Essentially you want to.
Yeah, but we brought this over from all of our work in the DMTF and Redfish work. We do 100% of the stuff in Markdown. So we've been bringing that over as this is a much better, more modern approach to this stuff. In other cases, it may not be the case here, but the beauty of it is that working documents in GitHub and Markdown is it all renders in the website, so you can do live edits and make comments, so on and so forth in the normal, the way that just the same way you would make comments on code. but changes can be done across, multiple documents or,
Yep.
code and spec and so forth.
You can
All
get
through a
crazy.
single
Yeah.
pull request. So it's like, yeah, you can actually bundle everything up to say, we approve this. So it works really well for that. And the only downside is if you try to do some really heavy nested table crap, then Markdown starts to go, I give, uncle. So it does kind of fall apart there. And what we found is, if that's the one downside, you probably shouldn't be doing that anyway. So,
Right. Yeah, it's kind of
we're not going to be getting into like bit level definitions, so it probably will never hit us.
yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll see too. And if Shruti, I'll let you know if Kevin, I mean, we'll CC you. Maybe he does a quick demo with us or intro just to get us started, and we can, yeah, maybe, or maybe I'll bring him in for next work group or something.
Okay, awesome. I'd like to include the other work stream leads also then. I mean, the other work group leads. So they can also see then. Yeah. I mean, if he's doing a demo, it would be good to, have them also just see it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and I can walk everyone through that too if we want, but I'll try to let Kevin do it because he needs to get used to it too.
We are still away from putting it on GitHub though, right? Like Jeff was also describing, we probably, till we have a lot of changes going on, we probably want to do it outside, and then when we are a little more stable, we go to GitHub.
Exactly. Yep. No, I agree. Yeah, I'll just get, like I said, I'll try to get the first one. I'm gonna try to borrow and steal from, if they already have some drafts and like they already have some kind of pre-existing sustainability language and background, like I'll just try to reuse it so that the in between all these work groups and the resulting specs at least seem similar, right? And then we'll go from there. Okay. Okay, so that was a good one. So I think so.
And Danny, if you and whatever you're starting with, what use your favorite. I mean, if you want to use Word or any text editor, Notepad++ is kind of our go-to for most of this anymore. But just just don't spend too much time on formatting because you'll be able to extract all that and then we can add it later.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, like you said, it's just going to get a free formatted anyway, so just put the stuff in there. Okay, cool. Okay, so
one more draft related question. So which format are you picking up? Like, is it a white paper? Is it a spec format?
Yeah, I know. I remember with Scott Chamberlain, so he actually left Intel, but I remember him saying for the carbon modeling work group, they had like an initial white paper or spec.
Yeah, that's a white paper draft. Yes.
That was the white paper draft. Okay. And what's I guess, I mean, kind of, I mean, yeah,
just that the templates are different, whether you're doing a white paper or spec, and also which type of spec, depending upon that, the templates are different.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, what do people think? Do we need to be doing a white paper and a spec, or just kind of going more towards the spec? Like what utility would the white paper have in addition to the spec?
I certainly feel like the spec is more, I don't want to say enforcing, but it's more clear in terms of that these are good recommendations made.
Yeah.
And white paper is a little more when we want to be generic.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe focus on the spec, like what do you need to be quote OCP compliant, and then if we find it useful, we can maybe do a white paper as part of just like getting the word out there. That's kind of how I think it would progress. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see. Maybe I'll try to check in with the other work groups. I don't know. Do you know, Shruti, if any of the other work groups have actually published any of those white papers?
Oh yeah, I mean I do know other groups who have published the white papers. The white paper doesn't go through that same kind of that same level of reviewing, etc. So I'm aware that they published it, although it doesn't have the steering committee vote and I guess project leads voting, etc. kind of thing. It's a little bit more informal publishing.
Okay.
Are you looking for the process or are you looking for the draft?
more just wondering like how they, like, yeah, if they've gotten one of these kind of published out there. In fact, I think that was
Yeah,
a
at least
question
I have
somebody
seen
asked.
one that came in. So
Let
I
me,
bet there are others that exist.
yeah, how do we, like, let me see here. So this is sustainability, right? This is power telemetry. And I think if we go up to here, you're saying, oh gosh, now I got the
Oh,
world. You're saying there's actually
oh no. Where is it? So they
carbon
had
I'm sorry.
modeling.
Are you asking where to find the list of the white paper published?
Yeah, like is
It's
yeah,
it
in,
yeah.
it's in, it's in the OCP main web page.
uh-huh. Okay,
If
so
you
it's not like within the group one, you basically have to go all the way out.
no, if you go in the OCP.org, there's contributions.
And the carbon modeling one is not published. So that one you'll not find for sure.
Yeah, and
Okay.
among the contribution there's white papers, and you just see the list of white
Okay.
papers.
So we haven't so none of those have published
Contributions.
anything yet then.
Let's go to database
Database.
and we should be able to select.
Got it. Spec or white paper.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sustainability.
So yeah, if you see sustainability, these are which were published, I guess, before I was very much involved, but
Yeah.
you'll see there are some on data sanitization, on LCA guidelines. These are actually all white papers.
Yeah. I mean, this one might be this is when they were kicking off this one, right?
Right, yeah.
And so there might be a couple of things. If we do a white paper, we probably want to reference this as like a baseline. Okay, I'll actually put those in the minutes too. Okay. Cool. Okay, anything else on specs or white papers, or those kind of good leveling for me at least? Okay. So the only other things I had, I think just follow-ons that we had actually from last time was in and around like I think periodicity, and then actually I should put here sampling rate. So for periodicity, I think Jeff, does Redfish, I mean, I know it doesn't really care. So like how is there I guess is there anything where we need to care about specifying this? Like, obviously this isn't an RTOS like environment, right? It's not going to be completely periodic, but there's sort of an expectation that telemetry usually comes in at a pretty constant rate. Is there mechanisms that Redfish could do things like check or flag errors, or if that's like an option, or?
You mean if things are drifting off of the, or just are you looking to go kind of specify, min max kind of stuff?
Sort of more just like let's say that you've got whatever 1,000 samples, right?
Mhm.
And does each of them have I guess each sample has a timestamp?
Right.
So each cycle has a timestamp. So basically, I guess it's really all on whoever's reading that. I mean, the Redfish, it's just a pass through, right? So there's no kind of like memory, there's no window, there's no buffering. It's just going to go straight through. So really,
Yeah, there's concepts in the model to be able to, to number one, to explain, what your sampling rate for like a particular sensor. So you can say that, hey, this sensor gets updated every millisecond, let's not go that far, but
yeah,
every
100 milliseconds or 10
is
milliseconds.
is it every 5 minutes, so yeah, and that's that can be discovered in the model. And then I think there's questions about because the reporting functions, the telemetry service, the stuff that's there now, and I'm kind of trying to take a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from folks and trying to make some making some proposals for improving or for creating some new capabilities. And it's kind of what's going to it's I want to make that all informed with the kind of things that we come up with here. So the existing, like the telemetry reports, you define what the sampling rates would be, and so yeah, I want to get this report of these metrics at at a 1 minute interval, and then start counting those. So you can build those things up that way. One of the things I would like to see us do is specifically for for whatever data it is that we're asking for, to come up with what are good numbers to give there. Because I mean, what I don't want to have happen is one vendor says, hey, I'm reporting the energy once a minute, and like, no, I'm reporting it once every 17 minutes. I'm just making up bad numbers.
Exactly.
And somebody else I gotta do it every hour. Like, well, if I can subdivide that, then hey, if you want it once an hour and I give it to you every 15 minutes, well, then you're not so bad off. But but we are creating work for people to do those translations. It's when you start saying like, well, I really need it every 5 minutes, and like, well, I'm only giving it to you once an hour. Like, well, now you're kind of screwed, right? So but I want us to come up with maybe some reasonable things that we can say, hey, the knobs are available to folks, so you can go twist the knobs however you want, but from OCP's perspective, these are what we would like to see as either as defaults or some defined sets of capabilities to say, hey, to meet the needs of these data center metrics, I need this kind of sampling rates for these things.
Yeah, I think so I think at least sort of a default, and then sort of a I guess in the case of a sample, well, I guess a sample rate, it would be a min, right? Because that's faster. So I agree, it'd be nice to have like a default rate, and then at least like let me think, min, or let me see, so rate max.
And there's some of the stuff that gets into some of the accuracy things. I mean, especially if you're looking at instantaneous power, if I'm averaging that out over a 5-minute period, that's a very different answer than giving it to you, at 1 second, instantaneous. So there's some things we need to be careful on, but in general, it's let's make sure we're getting reasonable amounts of data without asking folks to generate reams and reams of stuff, because if you're counting kilowatt hours, sampling that every millisecond, or you're gonna get the same value for about 10,000 samples or 100,000. Dude, you just create a bunch of work.
Yeah, and the two numbers that I've heard are kind of like 100 milliseconds and 10. So sort of like, well, sort of 10 to 20. I've heard sort of like, there is some manageability type things that run at this faster rate. Kind of, but that's almost like within the platform, if you will. I mean, I know.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely, I mean, things like the power capping functions, they will run to be able to clamp, kind of at those rates. But if you're expecting that to be an external system that's supposed to react to that, it can happen, right? So that's stuff that has to be handled in tight loops within perhaps within the workload or the OS, if not at the platform level. What we should be looking at is hey, if I'm trying to make decisions on how to deploy workloads for the lowest, for the most power carbon efficiency, that's probably happening like at the minutes or hours or days granularity.
Yeah, I mean, that one's a weird one, because for the people who like, if we take the other angle, and I know this is like the big phase 2, right? Like the application people, man, they're like, give it to me in very fine grained, like, this one workload or this one process is running, and okay, well, that thing ran for a fraction of a millisecond here, and then 5 milliseconds here, like, but I think that's all going to have to be solved like at a CPU level, and then
right, and to me that whole exercise sounds to me like more of an application profiling. The same way you would profile for performance. Is that is that valuable? Absolutely, but I don't think you're going to do that on a deployed fleet of machines, because the monitoring overhead of that is probably impacting your your footprint more than the savings, unless you're like really, really gross on it, right? But so I can see that kind of instrumentation and work going on. Like, hey, I'm gonna go build this up in my as as part of a development process, and then okay, now I know how to behave this thing, and so the knobs get a little not so ridiculous, right?
So if this, but I guess like to your point of like the sensor like model is going to say how often it's pulled. Like, I guess do we because I agree with you. I think we need like a default or sort of like a quote quote unquote minimum, right? Like bare minimum expectation. And I guess I'm trying to think, do we need to differentiate between what's done, like you said, at the system level for power capping and power excursions and protections?
And power is probably the one that comes to mind where that happens. I mean, I think everything else is, you're not going to get, we're not measuring temperature. First off, we're not, you're probably measuring it in like, a half or a 10th degree Celsius at the most granularity. So, that is, your thermodynamics comes into play. That's not going to change every millisecond, right? You're going to get, it's on the order of seconds before you would see changes in that. Obviously there's processor stuff that gets extreme, but it's still not that way. But power is the one that does that. But I think that whether we spec it, we absolutely should talk about it in the document to say, hey, look, we're either not covering those tight loop power capping type controls because that's handled inside the platform. So is that out of our scope? But whether it's in or out, whether we cover it or we don't, it's a different set of requirements, and we absolutely need to say whether it's in or out because it will absolutely get asked.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of why I put this. I agree. So we should mention that, right? So some things like examples include overcurrent protection.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're expecting a REST interface to come and save your breaker, your safety folks are going to come and have a chat.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're right. So we'll need to include this.
One quick question, actually, for
Sorry, sir. I saw your hand up.
No worries. I actually wanted to understand one thing when you referred to Redfish profile, and I'm actually relating it because Mohan was telling me that there were some power profile publishing that you and John were working on.
Yes.
And maybe that's complete. So when you refer,
and I'm sorry, I said profile, and that's such a heavily overloaded term. I cringe when I said that. I didn't mean the Redfish profile. I was talking about the more traditional, performance profiling that as a work task, not as a document.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not that.
But since you mentioned it, yes, Mohan is aware of, and there is there are Redfish profiles. Those are interoperability profiles. So you describe that it's a checklist of support. It's like the requirements list,
right?
For support, Redfish support, and there are things in the hardware management profiles work stream in OCP. There's one going through right now for a power shelf. And we're expecting, and I say we're expecting, I'm expecting because I'm working on it, additional profiles in that area. And that is absolutely one of the things I want us to eventually produce is, here are our management requirements for sustainability, to say this is the data that I got to be able to get out of your platform.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So we'll have a sustainability power profile over there.
We don't have one yet, but and that, so I raised this at our workshop in July and said, hey, I'm your hardware management co-chair and therefore your liaison here. So I want that work. Let's do it. Don't worry about creating the Redfish profile document. I know that format intimately. So I also wrote that spec. So I will take care of that. What I got to have is the subject matter. So, tell us, we got to figure out what data we want, and then I'll go craft that out. But step one is what Danny's got on the page. Like we need to figure out what data we're going to ask for.
Okay, based on this, we'll have a sustainability Redfish profile there.
That should be one of our work products.
Targets, yeah. Okay.
So should we spec it like that expect that all sort of like all power sensors must be capable of being sampled at like 10 milliseconds, and then we say like we kind of note that that's going to be considered the fastest rate usable for kind of on system telemetry and actions, and then we can separately call out that maybe.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think for power, I think it would be reasonable to have two values to talk about.
Okay, good.
Look, for the purposes of fine grained controls in internal, there is probably a different sampling rates.
Got it. Okay. And then I'll put here any sensor.
And by the way, those at those rates, that may not, that may be being harvested by Power API or proprietary means, because it's all in platform. Because
what is Power? You said that again? Power API?
Power API is another API that comes out of the HPC area for doing some of those controls. It comes out of really some of the supercompute folk. But and then most of us in the more general purpose compute space have, that's either being handled, within control loops within the BMC, or it's in conjunction with, an OS agent or something that's doing those power capping things. But the point is that's probably not, we're not gonna see those rates coming out of like the Redfish REST interface, because that's how
Right.
REST interfaces work.
And that's basically what this one is, right? This is more the REST. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And you just literally call it like the REST interface like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And then that distinguishes like this is, consumed and actuated on internally.
Yep.
And this is fed externally. And via this.
And I believe that's going to be the only value that we're going to care about that's going to have that kind of distinction, because as I said, everything else is going to be more on the order of magnitude of seconds.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, like you said, and that's kind of good. It's like, well, 100 milliseconds, and then they're, whether they undersample or just collect, and then more act and, probably, aggregate or report out themselves at a higher level. But this gives enough fidelity for, I think, the vast majority of kind of like, oh, we want to debug something. This gives us the ability to do that, right?
And it would probably be good to explain some of those, because as you said, there's a difference between sampling rates and reporting rates. So if I'm trying to report average power or peak power, I may be sampling every millisecond.
Right.
But I'm not gonna update the reported value except for like once every 100 milliseconds, because I don't want you trying to hammer me every millisecond to get a new value. So some of the stuff may be lagging, but it's it's there. So it may be under the covers things, but especially for things like averaging and for peak detection on those tight grain controls, having some of that explained, how the under the covers should work. May be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, even things like, oh, did my PCIe cards go into L1 or D1 or those kind of things? Like, well, you might about this level to see it, right?
My caution is that let's be careful, because there is a barrel of worms here that will open up a whole bunch of people that are not looking at sustainability efforts when we start talking about those fine grain controls. So we may need to pull up on this and say, hey, we're trying to do power measurements for the sole purpose of energy and carbon reduction, not for how do I survive dramatic changes in VRM loads or or TDP.
Yeah, this big disclaimer thing along these lines.
Yeah, exactly.
In-depth debug and all that, and
because you get more engineers on the call, and they will we will auger into the dirt on power measurements. So
Yep, yeah, exactly. It's not characterization,
Right,
like
right. Well,
qualification level things.
and quite frankly, it's why when I have these conversations with folks, I try heavily to steer to energy instead of power, so that they kind of just stay out of that mindset. Um, because I guarantee you're not, no one is out looking at their electric meter on a millisecond basis, expecting the power company to give them a different rate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that'll be a good chapter to kind of like, or good paragraph at least to kind of like, um, in the spec for sure. Like you said, some nice things so we don't get into all these raffles. And then,
Exactly.
for
Well, yeah,
some
it just knows like we understand, we know there's a difference, out of scope, thanks.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So I think so default, do we need to do any other kind of min or max, or do we just kind of set a recommendation and that's kind of the implicit minimum, or what do you think?
Like I said, I said, when we get to the point of starting to see what is it that we expect to do with this data, then I think that you're going to want to have what granularity do I want you to report, so that we can get some interoperability on that. So yeah, it may be well within your capabilities to report on 1 second, but is that what we really want to drive the industry to be doing, or is 1 minute or 5 minutes or an hour, is that what we should be driving at, and like and then help folks understand like, well, what hurts and what doesn't, meaning like I said earlier, if sustainability says I need the energy readings once an hour, and somebody reports them every 5 minutes, well, that's fine as long as we understand that. It's like, yeah, I can sum that up, or in the case of energy, it's really nice because I can just skip it all.
You can
So, but if you don't have things that are that are multiples of, then we start running into problems, right? But so that's why I kind of want to put the stake in the ground. It's like, look, this is what we need. If you do more or less than that, that's okay. Just make sure that you're either, number one, reporting what we want exactly, or producing reports or multiples of that can be easily recovered, by a client. And just know that you are foisting more work on the client, but that may be acceptable.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on kind of sample rates? And this was a good one, catching this disclaimer. Any other, I mean, do we need so Power API this isn't an OCP API, that's just like an open source thing?
No, it's really coming from like national labs and supercompute folks is where that kind of lives.
Okay.
So I mention it only because when you talk about, inside the OS and inside the application, that instrumentation, that's its primary, that's where its primary benefits are seen.
Okay.
And one more thing, since we are talking about the sample rate, I guess in here, because like you folks were previously referring that a lot of folks have concerns about sort of revealing what rate they have measured at. In this case, would or I guess I'm asking, who is viewing the output of this? Are they sort of publishing everything that is in this power profile, including the sample rate, or who's the consumer of this entire thing? Is it internal for them to use?
I think so. I think it's internal until, and this is where we need at some point to sync up with the like Sammy and stuff, like the EE metrics group. Like, I guess if there's going to be a quote data center efficiency metric, right, the new one, then are they saying, hey, like to accurately calculate this, right? If this is going to be a legitimate measure, then you need to sample energy at this amount, or cooling at this amount or something. But I think, like Jeff mentioned, that's sort of like, okay, you build that into the client side of this, and we're just specing like, okay, the sensors will provide this, you'll have it at this level, and then client's got to pull it or, you know, do the math at the right rate, right? Sample it, keep track of it. I think it kind of goes into, yeah, I think it probably ends up actually in that spec, right? But we just provide the baseline for those sensors and the architecture to be there.
Okay, so this actually is coming from that work group's discussion only because we obviously have that concern over there that folks might not be very comfortable sort of publishing exactly the sample rate and other details. So
Okay.
one discussion over there was, and it's not concrete, but one discussion was whether we want to sort of put it in categories. Like we sort of say if you are between this to this sample rate, it is a category 1 type of metric measurement, something of that sort. So folks are sort of informing on how it is measured, but they don't need to reveal the entire detail. So that was one discussion over there
So
that maybe
there's
we have to look
concern
at.
that like, oh, we sample at like 1 millisecond and we don't let anybody know that. Like we think that's a competitive edge for us or something. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, sampling itself is not the competitive edge, but sort of somebody being able to understand that these readings are actually taken at 1 millisecond sampling, that sort of reveals the workload power profile, etc. So that
Okay, you're
that
saying
was the
like if
concern.
somebody, you're saying because eventually they want to, like if you want to report on a workload energy efficiency running in a data center, that kind of a thing.
Well, I'm not saying that we are reporting on the workload energy efficiency,
Right.
but for this purpose and for the PUE, IUE, etc. measurement, you have to take sampling at a particular workload, and that's probably more information than a lot of DCs. Certainly, it is a lot more information than DCs revealed today. So there might be a concern in adopting that.
Okay.
So I don't know if that would apply here, or do you folks think this is going to be internal, so it does not matter? Like in case of the DCEM workstream, certainly it is external.
I think, yeah, I mean, we definitely want to set this kind of default.
Oh, I don't know if it is my system, but I lost Danny's voice.
I can hear you, Danny. So at least I could a second ago. Danny, still there? Uh-oh.
Yeah, not gonna
Okay.
hear him either.
No, I'm not. Now I can't hear him either.
Yeah, I think his voice was breaking a little bit and then it
Yeah.
completely vanished.
Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, okay. Let me,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm around, just I think my voice was cutting out. Let me try one thing. Let me stop sharing for a sec. I'll try to do.
It's fine now. So
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I can go off of like a VPN. That might help a little bit. Okay. So you were saying, I guess it's just that they don't want to share the sample rate at which they used to get the number.
That is one concern that was there in the DCEM work group, that suppose sampling rate is a concern to reveal over there. So that's why I'm sort of, and they have not formulated what does that mean, that are they going to try to resolve it and put it in categories or something, or are we just going to go
Like
without that?
category 1 is 10 milliseconds or faster. Category 2 is 100 milliseconds. Or like, is that what they're thinking?
Something like that, yeah.
To obfuscate it a little bit, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. Huh? I don't know. I'm confused. I'm still trying to think why they think that's such a
yeah, no, he got me.
like
Yeah.
a competitive or yeah, disclosing something that's. I mean, you're just saying you're kind of.
I would think, or maybe when we next get chance in the main OCP sustainability
Yeah.
group, we can talk when Sammy is present.
Okay. Yeah, that was in Sammy's work group then. That's
Yes,
tomorrow
yes.
morning, right?
Oh, the one tomorrow is cancelled, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Mohan and Sammy are both out because some companies have a long weekend.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it's probably, yeah. God, I even forgot I'm out tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah, Intel, right? Maybe do you have a long weekend?
Yeah,
we
we have the day off as well.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, next we can speak to them next when possible, next Friday or in the main OCP project meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good follow. In fact, let's capture. I'll just maybe tag both of us in case I don't call in. Sometimes I have conflicts.
Okay.
With see metrics on sample. Okay. Anything else on this? That was covered more than I thought, which is good. Okay. So what is everybody's thoughts on temperature? I think, do we want to just keep this separate? Do we want to specify some things? I don't know.
Also, I think Danny, you're not sharing.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I
Screen.
went off sharing. Let me share again. Sorry. There we go. Share. Okay. So for temperature, do we want to, I don't know, I feel bad making it a separate spec, or we can handle it later, or, what are people's thoughts? I mean, it's going to be the same kind of things, right? So accuracy, do we want to say something like plus or minus 2 degrees or something like that? And then again, same rate. And then of course, where sort of what gets monitored. So, I mean, if we, yeah, I don't know, what are people's thoughts? Do we want to tackle this too, or do it as a later time?
It hits so many of the same areas of in terms of the folks involved that, I mean, power and thermal is almost always talked about in conjunction.
Yeah.
But again, I think we need to make sure that we're getting a scope that, what's, from the purposes of sustainability, how far are we going?
Yeah.
Because I think of when we get to like the liquid cooling systems, there is a ton of temperature information that needs to be conveyed. But is that really a sustainability? I mean, I think at some point this stuff's all gonna meet up at some set of requirements docs from OCP to say, look, from a telemetry standpoint, you gotta get a lot of this stuff for a lot of different reasons. So if we don't do it, somebody else will need to. But is there what do we think the application is for it in the scope of sustainability? I mean, it certainly is an input into a lot of cooling systems and efficiencies there.
Yep. And it's sort of like the in-system power. Like you're probably doing this anyway for your own internal optimization and monitoring, but like at the end of the day, so far as what's hitting the planet, it's all about how much energy you're using, right? So,
right.
Okay. So I think we can probably with that kind of like push it aside for now. For now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll get into there eventually. I would, from a crawl perspective, I think if we tackle really to me the areas are the power energy and some location data.
That's a good win, yeah.
Then I think that's a good win for version 1, and we can always add stuff.
Yep.
So following the agile models that work for all these kind of work these days.
Agreed. Yeah, hit the low hanging fruit first. Get most of the benefit. Okay. I think that's that. Then the next thing is, and maybe we've already hit it, right? Which is let's just tackle the system stuff first. But I think before we talked about device, I mean, I guess we should just say devices, right? So there's liquid cooling. I think for now we just hold off on this. That's maybe we get to that a little bit later, but I think the maybe low hanging fruit is devices, right? So, and maybe we talked about this. Maybe this was we did talk about it last week. Let me pull that up briefly, right? But was there any other storage? I'm trying to think if there was just storage, other things, because we talked about PCI devices, accelerators. Maybe it's that we weren't sure if these are covered today.
Did we talk about memory? Or maybe we just said storage and memory?
Well, memory, DIMMs for sure are an expectation,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's
we
pretty
spoke about
typical
them.
today. I think there was this question that I had around CXL attached DIMMs and if they're anything different.
Yeah.
But storage, and then we talked about like APU, GPUs are pretty common, and that comes through PCIe onto the system management, power management bus. Storage devices, I think, were ones where maybe we're not sure if they report these.
So they don't report a live power utilization, but if you remember, we also had a discussion whether, some of these devices, and that included storage,
Yep.
actually have like a spec where they can sort of define that in an active state, this is the power consumption, in an idle state, this is the consumption, and if there is a, middle state of lower power consumption, what is the actual power consumption in that? And then the device just reports how long it has been in each of the states.
Mm-hmm.
So basically manage it through a spec.
So you're saying it sort of like says, here's my power at idle, here's my power at this.
Yeah, it's ratings, or it's
rating,
kind of nameplate, faceplate ratings.
Yeah.
Not measured.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, do they what states do they call out? Do they just call out kind of idle and TDP, or do they call it anything different?
I think you might get a couple things, and I haven't looked at a lot of them, but you might get a faceplate that would be like max, and again, since as we talked about a couple weeks ago, the rationale for having this data for the most part was for facility, circuit planning. So
Provisioning, right? Like,
so yeah, and if you took you took some base load for the controllers and the rest of the stuff in the empty drive cabinet, and then you took the individual drives times quantity, you got to a pretty good number pretty easily. So the faceplate ratings for this is a 900 watt device, probably pretty close to what the maximum is in the real world. Whereas on a server, those numbers would be ridiculous. If you took the faceplate ratings and say, well, this is a 3,000 watt power supply. Well, then congratulations, you fill up your rack after 3U, right?
So a couple servers, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and meanwhile, you never came to even 25% of that, right? So that's what it is, and so I think when you look at like some of the power calculators from various vendors, if they take here's this big storage enclosure, and it may just be that it's like, well, what brand model, or what type of drive are you putting this, and how many do you expect to put in? Well, and there, let me spit out the I did that arithmetic for you, and here's your power, your power numbers. So that may be effectively what we might have to get.
Yeah,
like, because there's really no practice that I've heard of like sort of reporting states, like, because you don't change much, and then when you do, it's usually at, well, I mean, like, yeah, there's really few states in servers, right? Like S3 is pretty rare, and S5 everything's off, and idle you're kind of just at idle, and like, so I mean, there's really no tracking of like, oh, you are at idle, or you are at, I don't know, the link is in L1, and
We do have that on the, you do have an awful lot of granularity on the processors, but they throttle themselves up and down, based on utilizations. You don't have that kind of
exactly
variability on the storage side, right? The drive is spinning where it's not. You don't spin the drive slowly under low loads, right?
I guess that's a good point, right? Like, these devices don't have much of a load line, right?
Right.
I think we're thinking only about HDDs when we are saying storage devices here then, but essentially if you think about SSDs also, like they have an active and idle time that, the device does not so much report that, yes, it spent so much time in idle, but the systems are able to see that. Like the
Right.
system is able to track that, yeah.
So, and you're saying they go into like D1 essentially, like an idle? Do they go into like a low power idle or only just that they're idle and not being used?
So I'll honestly say that initially there has been, traditionally there has been only active and idle in the storage devices, but I do see that a lot of interest is right now going on in having multiple states.
Yeah.
So it might be something we want to keep in consideration, that at some point there might be other states that get extensively used.
So then, yeah, in which case, yeah, do they start actively reporting their power, right? Do
Yeah.
we?
Yeah, and I think all of these devices are being driven because of sustainability questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Live
Yep.
reporting these things. So,
Yep.
so some of this is a statement about, look, in the fullness of time, I don't think we will have to push very hard. It will happen because for a number of reasons, because they're getting pushed from customers, and they're also building these systems out of the same server component ecosystem, right? So especially you move to SSDs, it's like, guess what? That's a server platform with server power supplies and et cetera, et cetera. So as long as they start plumbing that stuff up, they'll start reporting it just like with the same kinds of capabilities that we get on the server side. So I think that will happen, and it probably happens without us. But we certainly want to reinforce that direction.
Yeah. Okay. So I think let's start trying to count on it. I mean, I don't know. We basically give them two other escape routes, right? So they can build their own power sensor if they want to, like, monitor
Right.
that VR or something, or, allocate under sort of the rest of platform,
Yes.
bucket. I think I agree with you. I think this is I think we're at an inflection point, and they're probably one of the devices that are slowly moving over, where mostly the ones already kind of there, almost there.
Right.
But I think we just kind of, maybe in a future spec this becomes mandatory or something, like in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah,
mandatory.
I think that's putting requirements out, as a go forward thing. It's just, we need to just set expectations that, look, as a client,
Yep.
if you're going to try to go sniff all this stuff out, if you walk into the data center today, you probably aren't getting that from the storage gear.
Yeah, exactly.
Start speccing stuff out for 2025. You probably put requirements to say, I need to get live power measurements from the storage stuff.
Exactly. Yep. Cool. Okay, well, we're at time, so I think this is good. I'll take a stab at putting some of the early parts of the, I guess, spec or white paper. Is there, I don't know, Jeff, you've probably seen a lot of spec. Is there a spec template that I could use or start with?
I don't think so. I mean, there's lots of white paper templates, but I mean, it's such a different category of stuff. I mean, I think I would just do what makes sense, and then we'll see if there's a, like I said, all the existing stuff is going to be like in Word docs and things. I don't want you just to go down that path. So,
do you want to start with the base spec template?
Yeah, is there one that you have or handy or anything, Shruti?
Well, yeah, I think that was probably a Word doc, and I don't think that's where we want to start from, because I don't want to tie to those.
How about this?
Sorry, what do you mean? I mean,
I would start writing it. I honestly, I would start writing it as a text file.
Just put it as a text file.
The base spec can be a text file also. I'm just talking about the template. It's in the text format or PDF format on that website, whatever you want.
What goes through publication? So there's a whole processing that can happen, that we take these markdown documents and they get processed through publication, and that'll spit out a PDF.
Right. So you start with text.
Yeah.
Got it. True. Okay. All right. That'll work. All All right. Well, sounds
good.
good. Well, I'll see most of you next week. And Jeff, I guess you have fun at the Supercompute conference.
Yeah, I'll be talking about power and energy and all that. So
Awesome.
top of
Nice.
mind. All right,
Cool.
thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
weekend.
everybody. Have a good long weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Okay. Bye.